Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 14th. I thought we'd revisit the Cheviot Breed Study that I posted in my last video. So I've skeined it up. It's currently soaking, and I'm going to be dyeing it up. So I ended up with 126 yards of 3-ply, which is a pretty good amount for 4 ounces, and it's really puffy. So it did inflate quite a bit during the plying process. Now what I also have is a sauce pot, half full of water. I added 2 tablespoons of citric acid. Now with protein fibers like wool and alpaca and pretty much anything that comes with an animal, you have to add an acid to get the dye to stick. So in this case I used citric acid. You can buy it powdered in bulk. I think it's used for making sodas and beers or something, so it's pretty easy to find. You can also use white vinegar. That will have a much stronger smell. In my experience, the white vinegar sets the dye maybe a touch faster, and it is probably easier to find for most people, but it does smell a lot worse. So today I'm using citric acid. Now as for the dye, I didn't want to deal with my not food safe dyes today. This pot's only used for dyeing, so I'm not going to be cooking food in it either way. But I didn't want to have to put on all of my protective equipment. So today we're using food coloring, specifically Wiltons Violet. Now I chose Violet because it is one of the ones that breaks most easily. Wiltons Violet is made of multiple different dyes, which when you add it to food, show up as purple. But when you dye with it, the colors set at different times during the dye process. You'll have some parts that have pink on them, some parts that have blue, and some parts that have purple. It's a pretty cool look. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I've already tied the yarn with cotton to make it easier to get a hold of it and to keep it from tangling as much. This will help me when it comes time to unskein it as well, because I'll have a clear boundary. So I'm just gonna drain off some of that extra water. Doesn't have to be soaking wet for this part, just damp. And I've had this heating for roughly 10 minutes, so it's probably hot enough for me to start. You can use a thermometer, but generally speaking, when it starts steaming, you know it's probably hot enough. When it starts boiling, turn the heat down. You don't really want it to boil. When it starts boiling, you have more agitation. More agitation means felting. I don't want this to felt. It'd be different if it was superwash, because that can't really felt, but still, we want to avoid agitation as much as possible. So I'm going to start with one end, drag it around in there, and then slowly add the rest of it in so that the depth of color will be different on one end than the other. And I wish you could see this a little better, but I don't really have a tripod that'll work for this. So I will just have to explain and show you at the end. And as I expected, the blue color is setting first. So the first part I put in is very much blue. Actually, you could probably show you. Can you see that? And then add a little more in. The blue strikes first, and then it becomes more purple the longer I leave it in there. It's a really fun way to do dye work. It happens with other colors too, like black. I have yet to find a food coloring black that doesn't break as soon as I try to use it. If you've ever done that kids science experiment where you color with like a Sharpie or another marker on a piece of paper towel and then do drops of alcohol, and you know how it splits apart into different colors as the alcohol hits it, it's very much like that. The colors break apart into multiple other colors. Alright, let's do the next part. And the water is pretty hot, so obviously I don't want my hand to hit it, but I have tongs to take the yarn out when I'm done. once it's all in there, I'm not really going to be stirring. I don't want any more agitation than necessary. It's so fun. I love how this looks. Okay, time to drop it in. Make sure the whole thing's covered. Alright, so I'm going to leave that probably about 10 minutes and check on it. I mean, it's at a reasonably low heat, so I'm not particularly concerned about it boiling in those 10 minutes. Maybe like just beginning to. I'm more concerned about how long it'll take for the color to all set and permanently stay set. Food coloring isn't really as long lasting. Well, no, let me rephrase that. There are some food colorings that are not as long lasting as a normal dye would be. Usually the more neon colors. However, the more neon colors for normal dye are also not really long lasting, so in that respect it's not really that weird. Now in terms of how long it takes them to set to the yarn, some colors take longer than others. Now for both food coloring and actual acid dyes, I find blue always takes the longest, so I'm a little concerned about how long it'll take to fully set. So I was going to leave it alone and we can come back and check on it in 10 minutes or so. I'll set a timer and I'll see you then. Alright, so I actually waited 15 minutes because the first time I checked it, it still had some color in the water, but it looks about clear now. So I'm going to take it out. Got my tied area. Hopefully you can see it. You see how it's more blue on one part and more purple on the other because of how I put it in there? Really pretty color. I love the way they layer with this particular food coloring because it almost ends up being really electric. And there is a little bit of blue left in there. Just a little, but not enough for me to care. Alright. Get that into little, I buy all of these dish pan, not dish pan. What do they call these? Oh, I guess they are called a dish pan. At the dollar store, just for soaking wool and taking them in and out of the dye pot. So those are the colors. It came out really nice, and as expected, it did puff up even more while it was in there. So it's, oof. I thought it was going to be worsted weight. It's a little bigger than worsted weight. But hopefully it's still enough yarn to knit a hat, which is what I was hoping for. Assuming that once it dries it's soft enough to knit a hat. We will see. So yeah, there's that. At some point you'll see the fully dried yarn on my channel, probably when I'm ready to knit or crochet with it. But that was the dye process. It's pretty simple. Usually it takes less than 20 minutes altogether. Sometimes it takes longer depending on the colors. Some take longer to set. But yeah, it's fairly easy. And you will notice that different types of wool take dye differently. So this one, since it's Cheviot, it's a more matte colored wool. I mean, not matte colored, matte, how do you put that? It doesn't reflect light the same way, say, a long wool would, or even merino. It doesn't have any shine to it. So the finished colors won't be as shiny and vibrant as they would be if I was dyeing, say, Wensleydale, which is next month's breed study, so you will see that one dyed up as well. And I hope you're having a great week. I'm going to let you all go now. Thanks for watching.